Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of the Indy and Doctor podcast. I'm Indy. He's Doctor, aka Gurren. Also has a third nickname called Dr. Jazz Mavi. So his name's actually Jazz when he references himself. That may have caused a bit of confusion in previous episodes. I'm sorry about that, but he goes by three names. He's pretty unique like that. This week's episode is hosted with a special guest called Harvy Mander. So he is a founder and creator of Naujawani, an online media company creating Sikh and Punjabi-related content that inspires people to think for themselves. He has been an active volunteer for the Sikh Education Council and for Sikh-study programs and seminars. He's also a digital producer, a web editor, and a broadcaster. Thanks for joining us, Harvey. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
No problem. How have you been keeping with everything on lockdown 1, 2, 3, and 4? We spoke about this earlier in the week, and you told us that you don't actually own a TV license. So what have you been doing to keep occupied?
I don't know how people have time to binge watch video series or sit and watch TV. Life is very, very busy. Spend a lot of time working for a first thing, and then I have so many. What is it your generation calls them? Side hustles. So
yes, that's the one.
Our generation. I'm sure we're the same generation, huh?
I don't think we're that far apart.
We're far enough apart for me not to be able to say side hustle with a straight face. But no, it's it's given some time for reading. It's given more time for contemplation, putting foundation blocks down for work that I do anyway in my time. That needs a lot of time where you can sit and just write and move jigsaw pieces around. So when we go back to some level of normalcy, we'll be able to move quite quickly.
And so in the past year, so like you said, contemplation, time for reflection. And if this is bringing you straight onto the spot, but the first three things that pop into your head, what are the reflections from last year? What did you learn? What did COVID for you? What was it the catalyst for in terms of the way you lived? Did it change the way you lived? Do you look at life differently because of it? Anything that shoots into your head?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, even writing about it to some extent. It didn't really change a lot of life for me, and that's because I tend not to be a social animal. I don't really socialize very much. I have very, very, very few friends. I'm not the kind of person who goes out to many family functions either, and so I don't stay in touch with a lot of family.
Okay.
I'm a real nice guy, though, I promise.
Nice smile.
No, I for me, life is usually about spending time with my immediate family. They revolve, my siblings, my daughter, my wife, my parents. They take up most of my time, and then second to that is obviously work, as much work as we can do. Naujawani is a huge part of that, but unfortunately has not yet become my full-time, gig. So for me, a lot of, and then obviously there's all my volunteer work at the Sikh Education Council, teaching the Sikh studies, organizing seminars and conferences. What throughout the last year, what I learned was that for me, a lot of things didn't change, but I saw how a lot of other people are so reliant on the world ticking over and moving along that maybe I've been in my own bubble for too long. Maybe it's not so great that I don't have as many social connections and don't have as many social outgoings as I probably should. I probably need to take a bit more time to, relax a little bit and just go do something that doesn't mean anything, as it were. So time for self for me, a lot of people had time to themselves for the first time. I have too much time for myself. So now maybe it's more time that I should spend maybe talking to people that I actually like and trying to make friends with them. A couple of other things were then just really simple ones. One, realize my health is absolutely capitulating. The older I get, the less I seem to cotton on to the fact I was getting older. And
what do you mean by capitulating? What, like
the same things? Or? The same things I was doing 20 years ago. I'm doing now. If if someone makes a decent gulab jamun, I'm eating 8 or 9 of them. I don't know. Okay,
let's just pause there, guys. So just to give you a bit of context, anybody who's not Asian on the call. So gulab jamun is a brown ball.
How do you
of sugar?
In a
it's a brown ball that is just diabetes, man. And to have 9, let's just put it in context. Like one for me is like, I can't carry on. But let's just dissect that. 9 in one sitting. This is the key, or 9 throughout the day.
No, 9 in one sitting. I've done it quite a few times. We've done, like, I don't do it if we're out at restaurants, you charge like £3-4 a gulab jamun. They don't taste that nice either. But when you're at the
you want the
Gurdwara,
homemade authentic stuff, yeah?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's usually if I'm at the Gurdwara, someone's done gulab jamuns, you taste it because you don't know what it's going to taste like. You taste it and you say, that's it.
That's good. That's good.
That's
I'm gonna
a
carry
good, that's good
one.
gulab jamun. And I'll usually just ask for them to send me some more back. At my local Gurdwara, they always knew to just bring me a plate of 8 or 9. And I used to feel bad if it didn't taste nice. I used to feel bad because I was like, I don't want to eat all 8 or 9 now, but they brought me a whole kolli over. What do I do?
And you can't throw it away now.
I'd be divvying it out to everyone who's sitting with me. But yeah, that things like that, eating kara prashad every single day, that's diabetes on a in a handful. So I realized my health needs to have more attention to it, physical health. And then thirdly, I think I realized how privileged I am in my life, more so than I'd ever realized before. I've always considered myself incredibly privileged, but I definitely over the last year realized how privileged I am, because so many people, what I saw a lot coming out in the pandemic was fear of death, and life is sacrosanct, it must be saved at all costs. Whereas I've lived to a very different philosophy than that. I'm not one of these people who's on some sort of jihad for death, but at the same time, I can take it or leave it. It's all part and parcel of nature, and death should be a very natural part of the way we live. Exposing yourself to things that are awkward, that aren't great, that aren't nice. For example, my daughter was first born. She was in hospital for a few days. She was born by an emergency C-section, and they were concerned that she had an infection. So she had to be given an injection 3 times a day, it was, I think. And I never missed a single injection sitting. I went up to watch it every single time. And there was a couple of times where a junior doctor gave it, and he got it wrong the first time, then he got it wrong the second time. And I could just see the sweat pouring out of his face. He goes, I'm really sorry. I've got to do it again because I didn't get it right. And I was like really calm. And I said, yeah, just do it again. Don't worry about it. And afterwards, when he did it, he was almost in tears. But he goes, normally parents want to beat the living daylights out of me for that.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, well, it's life, innit? What are you going to do? You've got to keep going and keep trying. How else are you going to learn? And, if something happens to her, it wasn't you that did it. That's called hukum. And, that's the way you're supposed to deal with these things. So I saw through the pandemic, wow, I'm really privileged. The whole world's just scared witless. Gosh, may nothing happen to us. We're scared witless. And I kind of am very privileged to have lost that fear a long time ago.
Very interesting.
Wow.
Do you want to start? Should we start unpacking that? And there's quite a lot bit there.
I mean, there's a lot in there, Harvey. So, see, Harvey has this tendency to go off in tangents, right? So I need to put it back. So hang on. What did you actually do in lockdown 1? Like, give me a list of your what did you actually do? Because obviously, I assume that there's like a lot of reading. Yeah, a lot of
yeah, there was. I'll give you a quick rundown. Homeschooling. So because of my wife and my work patterns, mine being a little bit more flexible, I was doing 3, if not 4 days of homeschooling. And she's preschool. I say preschool, like infant school. So she requires hand holding throughout the entire day. So from around 8 a.m. until about 3 p.m. was me doing homeschooling. And that was all, school led, but we have to do all the work with her. Then, after that, I would wake up early as usual, do a couple of hours work. Then from 8 to 3, just with my daughter. Then from then on, it was trying to get in some email responses, clients or people I'm working with, trying to do some work, actual work that pays bills, and do that for about an hour or
clarification
so.
There.
Yeah, do some work for about an hour or so, and then go out for a big giant walk, go to the park, play, do that kind of stuff. Then come back, have dinner, and then just doing something with my daughter, or reading and actually starting to write. And I do that through till about anywhere between 8 or 11 p.m. depends what time I'm falling asleep. I'm quite an early sleeper, so it's not unheard of for me to knock out by 8 p.m. But then I'm up at like 4 a.m. every day anyway. So that was it. So it's astounding. I don't think your listenership is going to fully appreciate this unless they're parents. But homeschooling takes over your entire week.
Oh no, I can appreciate that. Like people I used to work with, they found it difficult to balance like having a kid and working from home and given the correct amount of what's the word, the correct amount of time to work and to your child and to keep them entertained and to not get distracted on calls. Like it's all very difficult.
Yeah, there's some parents who and it's not a criticism of them, but there's some parents who it would be okay, I'll leave them in front of the television for a while, or I'll put them in front of the PlayStation for a while, or they can play on some CBeebies games, some educational games. We don't allow her to be on her own at any given time. We're monitoring all the time. And
so you're monitoring everything that's going in.
Yeah, all of it. And it sometimes seems like over parenting, or that's really, really scary. But I'm like, this is a toddler. You don't know what, I don't know about you guys, but there's YouTube videos I've accidentally clicked on. And I mean that genuinely, you clicked on and suddenly there's loads of profanity and you're like, wow, there was no filter there whatsoever. So if you even leave them on, I'll watch this on Amazon Prime, it just flicks over from one video to the next, the time just disappears. So we really spend all our time then, you lose all your day. And then you see the kid learning and growing. And that's pretty phenomenal.
And you see that how real time? Because so I was having this discussion again during lockdown. I went for a walk one day with my mom. And I don't think about walks, but I'd probably same to you guys. But when you're walking, I become really reflective. I don't know. I think it's just a nice medium for that to happen, especially when I'm rambling as well. But one day I was walking with my mum and we were just talking about, so I went to a private school, and in this private school, one of the things that was very much championed was public speaking and professional public speaking and doing LAMDA exams and this kind of stuff. And I said, mum, at the time, I didn't really think it relevant. I was like, it's not directly, it's not maths, it's not like English or a subject. What am I actually really going to do with this skill? I said, now, mum, I look back at some of the things that you invested in when we used to come in. So mum's a teacher as well, by the way, guys, and all the extra stuff we used to do. But the ROI on that, it's not like the next day I'm able to articulate and hold conversations and do lots of these other things. But now when I look at it, when I'm in social circles, I'm around other people, and I can see one of my good skills is the ability to articulate. I'm like, wow, but how did you know as a parent back then what to invest in, and how did you know what the ROI was going to be? And I said, I was just gratitude from myself that, wow, parenting is, you don't know, man. And it sounds like what you're saying is you have a real appreciation that the mind at that age is very much like a sponge, and whatever you're putting into it, eventually, your daughter's going to form opinions, behaviors, and mindset is going to be dependent on what she's getting in now. But it sounds like you're very, very mindful of that. You're guarding, like Jim Rohn used to say, you're guarding the door of the stuff putting in. So, so my question really is about the ROI. So do you see that real time? Are you seeing, like you said, the growth and the progress? And how does that, I'm not a parent, so how do you see that when you're putting your efforts in?
I mean, I don't think I really see things like that in real time, but you see it sometimes. You'll see it in stand down moments. There'll be certain incidents that take place where you think, yes, it got through, right? And that's where you realize those things. I mean, I was fortunate. I was a school teacher for 4.5 years, and that gave me a lot of insights into this. And my daughter goes to a private school, and one of the arguments we're usually having with friends or other people, like parents, about why send them private is because of the opportunities it affords you. There's no, I personally don't think there's much other difference. I think the level of teaching you get depends on the individual teacher and how much the student likes that subject. But what private school does is it affords you opportunities that preschools don't. And, that's public speaking lessons. That's also trips, although pandemic has put a hold on that, you'd think. But we've had some things via Zoom, which children who go to state schools can't imagine right now. We've had access to things. And so, it's all of that. And then I think it's just trying to give the best setup you can. That's all I'm trying to do. She's an only child. We're not planning on having any more. We never did. And she, it's not like we put all our eggs in her basket. Whatever she does in life, she will choose to do. And it will be her fate that determines what she does. All I can do is play my small part. All my family, extended family, my wife, any of us can do, all the people she's exposed to, all we can do is play our part, try and give the best setup possible. And it seems to me like about it, I think from what you said, Jazz, that's the you're seeing the ROI. because
Yes.
it took 20 years later for you to start seeing
manifest.
that. Yeah, to see that.
Absolutely,
ROI.
and have the opportunity to use that skill set. And actually, it's when other people objectively look at that and say, Jazz, you're really good at this or this and this, because to be introspective is difficult. And that's been my not challenge, it's been my work to knock down to do even more deep introspection. Coming back to Indy, when you did the introduction here for Harvard, there's something really great, I heard you say about Naujawani, and there's this thing about helping people to form independent thought and opinion. And this is one of my big things when I'm speaking to young people, and I often do this social experiment where, I'll walk into, there'll be some like a group of people at work, and I'll just say something like, "Oh, guys, what do you think about Brexit?" Or, "Guys, what do you think about this?" And then I actually just listen. I don't say anything. I don't offer my opinion, and I see what opinions people have. And this is really interesting because Jordan Peterson, who I know you know about Harvard as well, says that 95% of what we say actually isn't our own independent thought and opinion, but it's simply conforming to what we hear. Because a lot of people are lacking the ability to critically think. And the other important skill I'd say with the public speaking is debating. Now, this is something, again, I didn't see the value of. There's a debating society in my grammar school, and I used to go to it, and I was like, I'm quite good at this.
Yeah, I had that too at school.
Maybe it's just a bit of arguing. Yeah, you went to private schools, one. It's like, is it arguing? What's the value? And now, again, the ability to form succinct, articulated, cohesive arguments or phrases, it's just amazing. So yeah, definitely.
So Harvey, I have a quick question. Why did you start running the Bungalow competitions? Because
given you're extra introvert.
in case anybody who doesn't know, right, that there's a few set Bungalow competitions that have been around for years. So there's obviously the Bungalow Showdown, which is the one set at university level, and there wasn't really anything in the professional space. And Harvey launched another competition to go alongside the university ones because there were a number of university teams that were set up, and they couldn't get into the Bungalow Showdown. So Harvey set up a secondary competition to go alongside it. And after that, he then launched the professional side of it as well to go forward. But after, I think, 2016, I think Harvey passed it on to a couple of other people, and he stopped running it himself. But I'm just interested to see as to why Harvey did that and what his overall background is. So do you spill the beans, Harvey? I have no idea.
And to give some context, guys, I love how you said, Harvey, I don't like people. you made it sound like you're introverted. I was like, yeah, you do this massive like competition. So yeah, a bit of context.
I love how Indy started with, I've got a quick question. It's nice and quick, isn't it, this one?
It is quick to me. I know the answer isn't quick, right?
Yeah, no, it's not quick at all. We start. Okay, so I mean, a little bit of backdrop. When I was at school and at university, putting on Bhangra comps was a million miles out of everyone's heads. When the first time I went to North America was in 2004. I didn't get to go and see a Bhangra comp, but I was around a few people who were part of a Bhangra comp out in the US. And so I kind of had this idea. I was like, wow, we should have Bhangra competitions here in the UK. If these Americans can do it, and they've only been there to like 10, 15, 20 years, we can do it. And I hadn't realized it was because they've only been there 10, 20 years and the internet has come up and blah, 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 that they were able to launch competition. I think the first university competition in North America is like the late 90s, mid to late 90s. So
wow.
I don't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it's really late 90s that the university competitions really take off there. And then, because of the internet, they started growing and they started building. People knew about it. Different, out there, SSAs, the Sikh student associations, would set up teams and then start going to competitions. Back here, nothing like that was taking place. Now, I'd finished university in 2001. So around about 2005, after I came back from North America, I started toying around with the idea of what would a Bhangra competition look like in the UK. I even got as far as, this is how wet behind the ears I was. I even got as far as contacting Nachda Sansar Bhangra team in Birmingham. And I contacted some people there, and they then ended up coming down to try and make us into a team as opposed to talking to me about the competition. A really nice guy who runs that team. I forget his first name now, but his surname's Kumar. And he's quite a legendary guy, in Midlands and Bhangra scene. But they were really nice guys and blah, 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 but it never took off. And I just kind of put it to one side. It was just little notes and things I was, jotting down on the back of an envelope, like what would it look like and stuff. Lo and behold, 3 years later, the Bhangra Showdown comes about out of nowhere, pretty much in 2007. So that first competition in like November 2007, and I went to it. I had like front row seats, saw the whole competition. I thought, this is phenomenal. This is brilliant. This is what we need. And there was no competition the next year because they made it for February. That's when they moved it across. So they'd already hit the 7-8 academic year. They now hit the 8-9 academic year by going to February. And I wasn't here. I was abroad at the time, so I didn't go to it in Sadler's Wells. But what I had done was I'd approached a couple of teams that I knew were applying, and I said, if you want any help, let me know. And I had, like one team reply saying, "Oh, do you know Bhangra? Then, like, are you a coach? You're like, do you be able to help us with moves?" And I was like, no.
I love that line. Do you know Bhangra?
Don't come to me for that stuff. What I am good at, though, is I can tell you all about meanings behind different dances. I can tell you there's like over 13 different folk dances and how you can incorporate them into your routines. And more importantly, what I'm saying is that you guys are uni students, so I know what's going to happen. You're going to run out of money pretty quick. So if you're looking for someone to buy you vardiyan, your costumes, or you're looking for someone to help you hire space to rehearse in or train in, we'll do that, or travel down to a comp. And by 2009, by the 2010 competition, I was sponsoring 3 teams. So Naujawani became, because they said, look, we have to have a legit relationship. There's got to be some sponsorship back. I said, yeah, just put the Naujawani brand name on it. But I never really looked for or asked for anything in return. To be honest, now looking back 10 years later, I don't actually have any records other than I'd have to dig through Facebook photos that people have tagged us in to find people putting our name on their hoodies or something like that. For me, it was just, let's get these teams actually up and running. So by then, at that time that happened, we then sponsored the Bhangra Showdown. So we sponsored the whole competition.
I remember that was 2011, wasn't it?
That's right. So that was a year later.
Oh, wow.
So I just reached out to Imperial. I said, yo, I run Naujawani, happy to sponsor the competition. They said, here's the different packages. I said, yeah, we'll come in at the top package, and literally gave them a blank check. And they said, do you know you've given us a blank check? I was like, yeah, how much are you going to use? Just go for it. Do what you want. And, they cut a check for £3,000. I think the fee they'd asked for was about £2,000 in the sponsorship. So it wasn't even big money. I know that sounds disrespectful because it's a lot of money, but what I'm saying is, in the bigger scheme of things, £3,000 to have only your name on all of the logos and artwork, to me seems sensible, right?
At the Hammersmith Apollo, I mean, this is a big venue in the UK.
Exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't the Apollo,
Yeah, and for me, it was like, well, let's just, you guys make this, the people who were running it at that time, like Mahipal Gill and Ram Joshi, you could go back and find them and ask them now, and like, hopefully they'd agree. The one thing I was saying was, look, I don't care what you guys do with our brand stuff. I'm just saying, here's some of my ideas and influence on the direction of the competition, which was all about, make this traditional Punjabi. But the reason I'm giving you the money is, make it the best competition you can. Grow, build, do whatever the hell you want, do what you can with it, make it big and good. Let's build this thing good. And then we launched our competition a year later, Capital Bhangra, and we didn't do that out of spite or anything else like that. We'd actually thought about doing it by that point already. When I was sponsoring the Bhangra Showdown, we realized, look, that we need another competition, because as a sponsor, I was privy to little bits of information. And I found out there was like 4 teams that didn't get into the competition. And I thought that's a bit messed up. Yeah. Right? They haven't got in. This isn't really cool. We need to have some
more. There were like about, I think that year, there were about 10 spots. This is 2012, right? That's when I did it. So there were 10 teams. And I knew that there were other teams out there that wanted to do it, but they just didn't have the resources, or they didn't know how to get into it. But uni socks were popping up, like Bhangra socks and other places were popping up. And I was like, okay, I'm assuming that they want to put forward a team, but they can't make the cut, because there was a bit of a legacy in Bhangra where if you competed the previous years and you won, you were definitely going to get in. So you would send through an audition video of you dancing, knowing, we're definitely going to get in because we won the previous year, or we won 2 years before, or we've got legacy people behind us that have passed it down to us. That's what I had at my university at Queen Mary. So that made sense. But the gap between the top and the bottom wasn't really that big back then. It is now, but back then it was kind of even. And I then thought, how are those other teams gonna gain experience without getting on stage and without really being given the chance? And then thankfully Harvey put together Capital.
So yeah,
your,
I mean, when
your
we
intention was to create a platform, Harvey. That was the main intention.
that's it. That was our actual tagline. Thanks for remembering
Perfect.
that. It was creating a platform. No, it literally was Capital Bhangra, a platform for all university Bhangra teams. And we said, you know, as far as we're concerned, we wanted teams that are going to TBS can also come to our competition, because we knew we weren't going to have that many teams starting off. And we said, look, we just want to create another platform. Let's get more dancers up. Let's get more experience going, and let's give people the opportunity to do what they you know, seem to like and enjoy doing and what they love. And it's a way for them to get in touch with their roots, with their culture. And it's one of the few things that I found people like actually being positive about in Punjabi culture was the dance form. And so I thought, well, this needs to be, you know, this needs to be promoted. This needs to be channeled in the right way. So we set up Capital Bhangra, put it out. We had 3 teams at the first competition. The year after that, we had 7 teams. The year after that, we had 8 teams. And, you know, so after that, it was just right. There's definitely more than enough demand here now. I think the highest number of teams in any one given year from universities has been 23.
23.
Because you ran 2 competitions, didn't you? You ran the Bhangra competition university and Capital Bhangra within about 2 weeks of each other.
That's right. Yeah. So
we Queen Mary. Yeah,
we ran TBCU and we ran Capital, and the same year you had TBS. And across all 3 competitions, there were 23 teams. And that's when I thought, all right, this has peaked now. We've got it good. There's a certain way it can go now. And sadly, it didn't go that way, not in my opinion. But I was thinking, now this is great. People will be able to build on this. We'll have, you know, 23 will become 40 easily, because there were still loads of side unis. There were a lot of unis that were collaborating together. And you could see this kind of deviating out and becoming a circuit, which is the word they use in North America. It's a Bhangra circuit. And I thought, okay, the UK will have that. We'll have one competition in the south, probably 2 competitions in the capital, 1 competition in the Midlands, a couple up north, 1 maybe even in Scotland, something like that. And, you know, teams will decide they can enter this one and this one and this one, but not that one. You can have a whole roster of dancers. You could have up to 25, 30 dancers. You could send
squad.
You'd send the A team to this competition, but then you'd send this team to that. Why not? Why not do that, right? So I kind of figured that gets more people dancing. It gets more people interested. It gets more people learning about the culture. And sadly, that didn't happen. It became all about the
winning trophies.
The best of the best. It just became about placing. There's nothing else. You had to get first, second, third, and even then,
and best male dancer,
best male dancer, best female dancer. People finishing third were upset that they hadn't won and stuff like that. It all just became about the trophy, and we had tried our hardest since 2012 to make it about the experience you're having over these two days. That's what we really
two questions from me, Harv. So one, just to give our listeners a bit of kind of behind the scenes. So, you know, you're running big competitions here. There's like 3, maybe 4,000 people attending. In terms of the organization for a competition of this scale, like how much prep are you doing? Is like a year? Like what are you doing in the preparation? How do you put together a competition on this? What's your team look like? And, you know, how does that work?
We'd start organizing the competition like a month after it ended. So the next competition, you'd work 11 months in advance of it. Usually we'd have the venue booked at that point. So if the competition, like towards the end, Capital Bhangra competitions were always in March. By April, we'd have the venue for the next year, deposit paid, booked, penciled in, as it were. By the summer, you'd just be doing little things like making branding, thinking of things like how we're going to promote this, how we're going to work on this. A lot of that was done by me on my own, or me with 1 or 2 other key people, and just saying, what could we learn from last year? How can we change that? Then as soon as September hits, it was just like all hands on deck, and everyone who was working on the competition would just be working on their bits, or the bits that they can get involved in. So whether it was liaising with teams, with captains, choreographers, making sure people understood rules, trying to sort out hotels and things like that, bookings, dealing with the venues. That's always the trickiest part, particularly for us, because we always closed off the bar. So most venues didn't, you know, every year, even with sometimes we're using the same venue. Every year you'd have to go and explain to them why we're closing off the bar. And, you know, they would charge us usually £3,000 to £5,000 for closing off the bar.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
you'd have to pay a lot of money to close off the bar. But you think about it, they make all their money on the bar. They're selling, a pint for £4, £5, and people are buying in the breaks. We had a policy, like I've always had a policy in my life, whenever Naujawani does anything, no alcohol served at the venue, at the event. And so whenever we've done that, whether we've done that with music shows or with Bhangra comps, we just have to pay a fee to do that. And the largest venue, that was where we paid $5,000 to close the bar. To cover it. Yeah. So little things like that, they were what took up your time. Talking to the teams began as the funnest part. And by the end of my time organizing competitions, it was the hardest part.
Okay, so give us a sense of that. Why did it become hard? Why did the dialogue,
in 2010, 11, 12, when I was just sponsoring teams or talking to teams at the first capital Bhangra, people were really enthusiastic. They were very much into learning about moves, learning about what Bhangra is, learning about other dance forms like Sammi and Luddi and how they fit in. They were still picking up, people were still finding their way. And so they had this great enthusiasm. When they'd speak to you, a little bit all starry-eyed about Bhangra scene and competitions and, inquisitively. But what I saw that evolve, and it has nothing to do with people changing, like as in, these people weren't there anymore, these new people, the younger people were different. It has nothing to do with that. In fact, there's one person I've liaised with since 2010, right up until 2016. And I just saw this drastic change. The guy I met in 2010 sponsored their team before TBS. He was a really nice guy, a bit naive, bit, like this, trying to work out what it all was. Bit coconut fight, if I can say that. And then by 2016, he was calling me with sometimes 30 to 40-minute long calls about a single bullet point that we had in the judging rubric about why that was warranted or not warranted, why it had this many points on it. And that's the point where I was like, you've just taken 40 minutes of my time. I've got a newborn kid in the house that I should be spending time with. I've had to come out of the house because I'm talking too loud. And, to talk to you about one single point of a rubric and the judging scheme. And there were a few occasions where I'd get people saying, well, you're not actually a dancer. So that's why you don't understand these things. And that's the moments where you have to bite. So that's when you'd bite your tongue a little bit and say, Salia tu to niana si, when I first met you. So, and you don't say that stuff. I'm saying it now, but it's because you think, you look back on it now and you think, man, I should have decked so many of these people. when someone,
and that was actually my second question, is about, like you said, so the intention was to create a platform. You clearly did that, but your second thing was to link people like maybe who maybe a bit coconutified with the culture and what it is to do Bhangra and the history and the behind Bhangra. I personally I thought that didn't happen. Like literally, maybe you knew the word fasla and like you were told this is crops, but everything got sidelined to, mate, how can I get this clean? I want to get this move nice and clean. How they do it in America? What can I do to my hands to standardize it? And it just became a race of who's the cleanest team? Can you go ham for 8 minutes? Who's got the best mix? That's what it became. So how did you, and what I'm trying to get into is when you started, and what was your way of getting people to understand what is Bhangra and what do these moves mean? And how did you do that? How did you try and part that?
You're going to laugh. The first thing we ever did was we offered lectures to Punjabi societies. And I kid you not, I gave a lecture at Queen Mary's Punjabi Society in like 2009.
Indeed.
I wasn't there, mate.
You weren't there then. Yeah, no, you weren't there. You weren't there.
I was like, when did Harvey do this, man? I swear I would have been there.
Yeah, no, you would have, but no, it's before your time. But it was very early on, and I went there, and I must have been naive as hell as well, because these kids had all come out to like a student union bar. They were sitting around. They were going to have a meet and greet type drink thing, but then they were going to have this 20-minute lecture about Punjabi culture from me, and I started talking to them about, Punjabi culture is based on a lot of myths and a lot of philosophy that comes out of those myths. So it's not about whether the myths really happened or not. What it's about is the learning that you take from it, and then you get to understand how these people evolved and why their culture is the way that it is. Punjabis are a very, very incredibly passionate people. They are also the most stubborn people in the world and will cut off their nose to spite their face. They really don't care. They'll do that. And so it was trying to explain that. And I vividly remember I started talking about Gorakhnath and Rani
Right.
What's
Sundara.
that?
And so this is one of the historical Punjabi legends that's told of
Right.
Rani Sundara and these two jogis, Gorakhnath, and it's like quite lengthy to go into now, but I started retelling that story, and you have to picture it. It's like a student union room bar type thing, and the lights are dimmed. There's just this like red neon light coming from behind the bar. And I'm looking at 25, 30 kids talking to them about Gorakhnath and how the love that he showed, the love that Rani Sundara has, is meant to be indicative of the love that is required for any soul to try and gain a realization of what existence is all about. I didn't say it as eloquently as that, definitely.
Right.
It was 10 years ago, but that was the message I was getting across. And I remember just looking at these kids, like kind of going like, what? Like, what's he going on about? Like, what? Why is he even here talking to us? Does he want to talk to us about Sikhi or something? I was like, no. I didn't mention, you know, my
Punjabi Sikhi.
my paggan were not that big back then either. And
right.
like I was wearing a smallish kind of pug and just talking to him. And it was like, no, I didn't mention Sikhi once. It was just about, you know, this is a place, when you hear the rhetoric of Punjab is a place of rishis and the peers and these famous fakirs, right? Guru Sahib di dharti ta hegi hai, so it is the land of the Guru, but it's a place of fakirs and great souls who had immense amounts of passion within them, but they were able to harness that and elevate themselves to higher states of consciousness. That's what this territory is about. That's why they've evolved a culture where different tribes in different areas don't like intermarrying unless it's with a tribe that they get on with. It's why you develop these different geographical areas. The Malwa in the north is, the Majha in the north is completely different to the Malwa in the south. And, you know, all of these kind of things I was trying to get across. And it was just the worst medium in the world.
In 25 minutes. I love it.
Me turning up to lecture people and saying, this is what you're
Harvey,
really
if
doing.
I was 19 and I heard this, I'd have been like, I don't ever want to come to one of these things ever again. My word.
Basically, that was it. I was very lucky in that the people who'd called me to these lectures were people who went on to become my friends in the sense of like the Bhangra comp scene. And, you know, they gave me the benefit of the doubt and they said, well, thanks for coming, blah, blah. And they never said, oh, it was crap. I knew that the minute I walked out. And I started thinking this has got to change up. So we did that in 09. We did that in 10, 11. By the time we started launching our own comps, all we were doing was we were cutting it down to like a 2 to 5 minute at the beginning of the pre-night mixer. So the pre-night mixer all became revolved around, let's have some fun, let's play some games. And the games would involve a much lower down version of Punjabi culture. It usually involved things like guess the track from the first 5 seconds. What do we put these lyrics into English? Who could do it the fastest? Who could do it the best? So it was all about little bits of fun and games of let's get you learning Punjabi language. Let's get you opening yourself up to what different songs mean and maybe why they shouldn't be in some of your routines.
Oh yes.
We had a few of those. Yeah, plenty of those.
Everyone had all of those, and they still continue to have all of those. And that's the stuff that gets a little bit embarrassing. You know, that's where when I speak to my cousins and my acquaintances in Punjab, and they think it's a joke. Like they think, you know, they already were saying North American scene is a joke. But you know, then they were like, you Balatis went the same way. You're all just a joke. This ain't proper.
And when they say joke, as in what are they looking at? The mixes are whack, they're not doing live Bhangra. What is it they actually, it's not a true representation of what Bhangra is. What is it when they say
because I'm assuming that they're comparing it to folk Bhangra, which is live sets, and that's not
they're comparing. They're not. Their main issue is with the fact that it all went to music sequences straight away.
Yeah, of course.
But their biggest beef is that there are different steps being put into one entire routine, and it being called Bhangra when parts of it are actually Luddi, parts of it are chumma
Oh,
or
because
something
they
else.
would do a dedicated set to just one type of step, and that's it,
Form.
which is a whole
Yeah,
set for
you
chumma,
do.
a whole set for sup, etc.
Which we've seen, but we're
Yeah.
saying
Yeah,
we're
I
using
think you're
Bhangra
right.
as this umbrella term.
We did that at Capital Bhangra. Every year we showcased after the first comp. Every year we showcased a different dance. So we did have a performance of Luddi. We've had a performance of Gidda, first ever professional performance of Gidda in the UK.
I remember that. Yeah.
So what we tried to do was, let's start showcasing some of these 13 to 17 dances. Let's start putting them out there a bit. And I'm not free of blame of this either. Some of the people I spoke to in Punjab, mainly at universities, and they were saying like, you're a big problem, you're a big cog, you're a big problem here. You are the problem. You shouldn't be giving these people money to be doing this stuff. You shouldn't be promoting them to do this stuff. You shouldn't be edging them down this way because they think they know something and they don't really understand it. So that was a major kind of issue.
And what did they think would be, what's their perceived negative consequence of us doing Bhangra competitions and
It's watering
being on the
down,
scene?
I see. Like, you're watering down the actual meaning behind it. It's not the actual way that it was. Yeah, that's it.
The one comment that comes back time and time again is that there's no grace. They go, "You've got no grace."
Wow.
That word grace, man. Oh my god, the amount of times you say you didn't have enough grace. I'm like, what does that physically mean? Like,
so
what's the tangibility of the word? It's so subjective. And I think definitely the UK seeing grace equals now. Well, grace has been sidelined for going ham and just going giving a pump and badke where you're jumping off the floor and this kind of thing.
You have to. One of the things about Punjabi folk dance, all of the different dances, was always about control. It's harnessing control. That's what folk dance was supposed to be, because otherwise you just have your phrase, people going ham. That's generally what happens if you go to a wedding or there's a barat, stuff like that. Traditionally, it's just people losing their mind and going nuts and doing whatever they want, arms everywhere, blah blah blah. And
arms everywhere, pretty much.
That's how I still, if I were to ever dance anywhere, that's still how I dance now.
That's the style,
It's complete pagalapuna. You just lose yourself, you go into it. Now, Sufis were one of the most renowned people to harness this energy,
the dancing,
to control it. The whirling dervishes, So a dervish, the word is actually dervish, but in English they say whirling dervish. But what they do is they harness and they control it. They don't lose sense of themselves. They're able to continue spinning. They spin their head round really fast, but they don't get a head rush. They don't get headaches. They don't lose it because it's in control. Now, when you move on to Punjabi folk dances, it's that, but for all parts of your body. So when everyone says grace, what they're really talking about is, are you in control of all of your body, your toes, the extension of your hands, even your facial. One of the things I think when most of the Punjabi judges say stuff about faces, about grace, when they use the word grace, it's about the face, because you can tell on someone's face immediately how much they're in control or they're not. And it's not just down to how much garmi they got, it's how much they're straining and stressing. I've got to have a nakra on, like this, just the standard nakra, right? This is
that's the second word there, right? Nakra. There's not enough nakra.
It's not done with grace. It's not done. The word that I always tried to use, it didn't really catch on, was integrity. You needed to have integrity.
Right.
You're feeling the pain. Friggin' show it. You got some pain in you there, right? Not like everyone copied. The problem was everyone copied Bhangra Empire. It doesn't matter if someone's put a nail through your foot. You got to do the cheerleader smile like the Bhangra Empire girls do. Like that smile just stays there. They Botox the hell out of it and just stay like that for ages. That's what got lost in translation for people in Punjab. I shouldn't be speaking on their behalf, but it lost in translation for me and my generation too. When we saw it, we didn't see control. We didn't see harnessing it. I like to see some mistakes, by the way, in a routine, because you're real. You're going to slip a little bit here or there. You're not going to be able to harness this in. It became about what you said, Jazz, just trying this aim for athleticism, perfection in athleticism.
That was always going to be the standard, though, isn't it? Like, no matter what you do, whenever you start with any idea, anything in the world, you start off with a nice original idea, and eventually it becomes regimented. Let's make it efficient. Let's make it perfect. Let's do this. Let's make it as good as it can be. Let's literally hammer and tongue it to the best point, and that's it, done. But by doing that, you lose all the originality. You lose all the jagged edges that come with it, like all those other bits that make it unique, it's just gone.
And then what I saw coming in was we had that phase, and then we had this other phase where it was like, okay, now everyone's clean. Now everyone's like really fit and goes to the gym.
Now what?
Yeah, right. So then it's like, now let's just for a whole year. So the competition organizer organizing the comp. What we're going to do is we're going to watch India teams for a year, and then we're going to get loads of random segments that no one's ever seen. We're going to combine them, make this hybrid fusion dance, and then we're going to drop it, and then start doing all this on stage, right? And then that's it. And that's going to be the killer move. You know, when Ojala came out with that killer move, and everyone's like, everyone needs to do this now. And big point for me. I remember when Basta Punjab dropped that move where they do the whole like this, and the first time I saw that, and I was like, wow. And then you saw everyone doing it, and it's like,
everyone
it's not the same.
Even now,
it's
all
not
the
the
time.
same.
There was too much borrowing from other people. There was too much not trying to be yourselves. I got to put my hands up. I'm a huge part to blame for this with the other Bhangra organizers. We comp organizers. We started wanting to push teams away from gimmicks, because we thought gimmicks had taken the mick a bit too much. Like, there was such a thing as doing gimmicks, right? I can't remember which TBS it was, but there was about every team had a gimmick, and the one that
stands out, the umbrella gimmick, Harvey. I remember
the umbrella gimmick.
I think you said it once. Like, is anybody else going to do an umbrella gimmick for this year or what? Like,
I
remember you saying that, because it kept happening every year.
Do you know the one that went over? Though I shouldn't say this because they were a really good team and I liked them so much. But it was
Kingston. Should we guess? Let's get wait. Bowling ball.
Yeah.
Kingston.
That was it. It was that one. It was the bowling ball. And when I saw the bowling ball, we saw that live, and my heart just sank. And I was standing there going, yeah, like this. And inside I was dying. And I was like, no, this went too far. And we really pushed every team after that, saying, concentrate less on the gimmicks, think more about your dance. But when we did that, we took some of the fun away from it, and we were part of the problem to push it towards this. Well, let's become the most athletic. Let's have the best stamina. Let's have moves. Yeah, let's have moves that are
executed. If you didn't have that, you're going to focus on the bits that are more rigid, and you're going to be like, let's push that further.
Right. If we could have found a perfect balance, right? I'll give you an example. The perfect balance for me was like the early 2000s in the United States. If you watch Khalsa Junction, like, you can YouTube it and Google it if you've never seen it, but Khalsa Junction had a gimmick of the lights go out, and then they arrange themselves into a format that's like a car, and then the headlamps come on at the front, like they'd have two little torches, and then they'd be bouncing, and then they'd have the where the cars bounce, the hydraulics, and they'd have all that going. They did a comp where somebody else went and did the car gimmick, right? And they at a comp then did the car gimmick where the lights went out, this music came on, the Pink Panther music, and it was like someone was trying to steal the car, and the alarm goes off. You just see this shadow running off, and then this guy comes out, presses his little automatic ignition to stop the thing, turns to the crowd, and the audio over the top said, "Why is it everywhere we go, people are always trying to steal our car?" And the crowd goes ballistic. The crowd goes ballistic, and then the music kicked in, which was their own personal jingle for this is Khalsa Junction, blah, blah, blah. But that was, like, for me, the height of gimmicks. That's what it was supposed to be. That's what a gimmick was supposed to be. It was supposed to be intelligent. It was supposed to be a slightly kind of thinly veiled hit at other teams around you, friendly, not to start beef, but a thinly veiled hit. And it was supposed to fit as part of your routine at the very end. The gimmicks changed too much.
There's certain comps as well that, like, in America, there's gimmick competitions, there's folk competitions, there's like fusion competitions. That's probably the way to go about it. I don't think we had that in the UK, so you tended to find like random teams would throw little bits in that didn't really work. I think the height of the scene was TBC 216. I think that was the peak of the professional team scene, because that had the highest standard, and I don't think we've seen anything since, where teams from pretty much 1 to 6 were all really good.
I think
that was one.
Unfortunately, there's a few people in the Bhangra comp scene who disagree with you and would say TBC 2014 was the height. For a while, I was thinking that too, but more and more over the last few years, the more I've watched back videos, and I tend not to watch them too much nowadays, but the more I'd watch them back, 2016, I did literally leave it on a peak. TBC 2016.
I think you did hard. That's a very fair point. Yeah.
No one's ever bettered it. And even the TBS performances I've seen the last few years,
they've not been the same.
Not even close to what TBC 2016 was. it was huge. It was really
It was
big.
it was a great comp. I remember that hard. That was my last comp. I knew I was walking away. I was going to get married the final year, and I remember our last training session. Indy, obviously you'll remember it. And I just walked around the room. Everyone was sitting on the floor, knackered, excited, scared, whatever it was. But for me, there was a sense of, this is it. Whatever the placings, I'd already won at this point, so it wasn't the novelty of winning. So I walked around, I shook everyone's hand, I said, thank you for this opportunity. And yeah, I want to say I gracefully left. Let's use that word. Yeah, I gracefully left the scene. And I actually remember when the placings happened, because we were all on stage, brothers in arms.
Yeah.
And I saw my parents. I was looking at them, and then the placings came. We were happy for the teams that won. And I just looked at my family. I said, I'm happy. I'm free. I haven't left anything here. And now I still look back at my performances, even though it's 4 years, man. Where's that time gone? 5 years. I think it was great. 5 years, yeah, but I left everything there.
I needed more people like you in these comps who would do that, because for us, that's what it was all about. It was about competing, meeting other people who share this passion and interest with you. And like I said, the root of it all was, I never shied away from it. I want you to get in touch with your roots, with your backdrop. I'm happy there's non-Punjabis doing this and learning about our culture too.
Yeah.
That's great too. You guys learn about this too. Learn about our culture, in the same way that European culture and society has kind of taken over the world. And now North American, Black North American, I should say, culture has taken over the world. In the same way, one day I'd like to think Punjabi culture might grow a little bit and extend itself out. And that was the kind of medium through which we could do that. Unfortunately, that didn't always work out. Your team definitely at that comp was easily the most patient to deal with, especially because we had a problem with the scoring at the end.
Okay.
You still didn't. You still didn't place, but I'd got a score wrong on the sheet that went round to you guys. It was quite a bad mistake as well. But you still didn't place, but you came a lot closer than you thought you had immediately. But the grace with which Harpal and Harnik took that, and there was only a couple of digs or jokes about it on social media at the time. And I remember thinking, like, damn, man, I really needed every team to be like this. And unfortunately, that's not the way it rolls. The teams that place are always happy and give you lengthy phone calls afterwards telling you how great the comp is. The team that finishes in the lower echelons are the ones who give you a lot of hassle, tell you this was wrong, that was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And that's when I started realizing, man, that weren't happening in the first few comps. The second Capital Bungalow, that was a proper comp, 7 teams. UCL came second. They complained about 1 or 2 things for about a couple of days later, right? And they were the reigning champs from the first comp. But the University of Leicester had won. There was a couple of things that weren't great in the way we'd set the rules out. But UCL complained about it for a few days. Then they got on with it. They were happy, they moved on. We saw that all the way up until around 2016. And that's when I was like, in that last year, I just lost the plot with how to deal with people.
I think in that year as well, Harvey, like the reason why you think that we were so not over the top about it in the end is because, I don't know if you've seen it, Sonny made that GoPro video, right? About the team and stuff, saying, why did we enjoy the GoPro video, and why did he put it together? And in the end of it, there's Harpal giving a speech saying, lads, doesn't matter if you finish. Sorry, it doesn't matter if we come first or if we lose. It's all about the satisfaction. And he was right. It was always genuinely about giving a good performance and having that feeling of a good performance. Like, I watch that setback, I still get goosebumps. I still get nervous. Like, I'm like, this is a great feeling. I can't get that feeling ever again. I still remember the sound of everybody on stage. I remember where all our fans were. I remember the smell of the stage, like all of it. It's all still really there within me. But going back to the main point as to why you stopped, then I'm assuming it's mainly because of people's reactions, too many people getting egos, like all of those little things just started grating on you. You just thought, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. Let's just leave it.
Yeah, I never thought, it's not worth it anymore. What I did think was, though, that I can't keep doing this because I'm going to get into trouble. Like my stage manager, Gurdeep, every single year, like pretty much every comp I ever did, I had the same stage manager. We'd move him around. So
Gurdeep,
other people
what was his name? Oh, Doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Gurdeep Sian.
We worked together first year. Yeah, really cool guy, man. I really love him.
He was
this guy knows everyone, man. I swear. Goran, you go non-stop.
If you go back and you watch Sunny's GoPro video, obviously Gurdeep didn't know. I don't know if he knows he was on. but he's there calling us to go to stage, and he's a funny guy. So he's like,
I
boys,
know the guy. I recognize him. Yeah, I know him.
yeah. He's like, boys, grab your balls, grab your shit, grab your stuff, and he just says all his random stuff. You're like, this is good deep, man.
Yeah. He was one of the early organizers of TBS. So like, I think he was involved in the second year of TBS. He was at Imperial College. So the second comp they organized, he was backstage. Third comp, definitely he was backstage, and he was part of the main leading committee and stuff. He got involved with me very early on, and I said, look, I'm doing this kind of stuff, putting comps on. He became my backstage manager, side stage manager through all the comps. We'd let other people come up and experience that. That was a big part for us. Always we'd change volunteers up backstage. You get a chance to experience doing this, experience doing that. It's good on your CV, but it's a good experience. But essentially me and Gurdeep would run things together. And Gurdeep, he would give speeches like what Harpal gave in Sahalarious's video, right? Gurdeep gave us that all the time, and he was giving that to all teams. Look, when 10 years from now, you're not going to care that this happened or that happened. It's going to be the experience you have and the memory you have of like, these are fun days. He goes, learn that now. Trust me, learn it now. And people,
it's true.
People just weren't taking that on. Where we left was in 2015, I had a couple of fights. They didn't end up, they didn't go physical. I'm not a physical fighting person at all. And I'd probably get laid out myself and knocked out myself, but it was not genuinely,
At least he's honest. I would as well, right?
I don't work out and I don't get involved in physical fights and stuff, but obviously I get involved in arguments and fights, and I got a bit of a gift of the gab and I had to get myself out of it usually. But when I don't, I'm not a kind of guy who's going to walk away either. I'll stand there and just take it, then give me a cut, then innit, touch my pug, and then this becomes a masala for death. But other than that, if you rightly knock me out, then maybe I deserved it, right? So I'm arguing with people like that, and in 2015 we had a few arguments like that, and that was the biggest competition we ever did. We did that at Her Majesty's Theatre in Piccadilly. We had 1,500 people in the venue. It was huge, and I had a few scuffles like that, a few little bouts, and there was one guy who'd come in drunk. I had to personally evict him from the venue. The stewards got him out of the theater, but then I had to get him out of the venue. So little things like that happening, and I started thinking like, okay, this is going to start escalating. It was in 2016. That's when we did TBCU and we did Capital Bhangra. So I was dealing with like 17, or I think it was 17 teams in total, and there was at least 4 different teams that had major problems, like with things. This hasn't been all like, we don't like the way this rule is. We don't like that we're in this room for changing or blah, blah, blah. And that's standard. And you apologize. You say, look, we'll try and help you out, try and move you around, do what we can. Is when the actual comps kicked off that it was really bad. Like there was a couple of things that stood out. TB's at Capital 2016, a guy basically from backstage wanted to go out front and speak to his parents. And we had this.
This is a dancer.
A dancer. So yeah, this was a dancer. So he's a competitor. He's backstage. And we had a rule that once the competition starts, the only people backstage is the choreographer, your team doctor, if you got one, or a physio or something, and that's it. Like a dresser, the turban ties are told, even the pagwale, the turban ties are told to leave 1 hour before we actually start.
I remember that.
Okay.
We had some quite strict rules, and it's because we were getting fined by venues, particularly that venue, Queen Mary's Great Hall. We'd get fined when we broke certain rules, like there were too many people in the foyer area.
I didn't know that.
There's too many people going in the stairwells. And we tell teams this, look, I'm getting fined for this every time you do it, don't do it. And the rule was, once you're in Vardi and the competition has started, people are in the venue, you don't go out front. We're really sorry. We know you want to go see your parents. That do it after the comp. Tell them to hang back and do it after then. Don't do it during comp, right? And because if I let one person, there's 150 of you. I should really let all of you, and that's chaos. So we're not going to do that, right? We're not going to do that. And this one guy said, "I don't give a what you say. I'm going out to see my dad." And I said, "Sit back down. You ain't going anywhere." And he kind of moved himself back, went to one side. I kind of walked off, thinking that's the end of it. I was then front of house 5 minutes later, saw him standing there in full Vardi with his old man. And I went straight over to him, said every Gandhi Panamadi gal you can imagine, and pushed him
with his
back
dad there as well.
Yeah, his dad there. This guy was like 6'1", so I didn't push him back to one side or anything, but just through the sheer volley of my vitriol, he backed off a bit. And I said, "Mate, I'm about to shut down this whole competition. and every dancer and every family member here is going to know it's because of you. And like, I told you to not do this and you've just gone against my rule. So as far as I'm concerned, this is all shutting down. I completely lost the plot basically with it. I'll openly say that. But I was so vexed that this guy is challenging me like this. Like, what do you think I'm putting this on for? Like, it's not for fun,
the
right?
lack of
like,
appreciation, the gratitude, and I presume he knew who you were. Like, you know, you're the head honcho.
Oh yeah. No, he knows who I am.
Yeah.
And here's where I then feel really bad. Gurdeep had been called over the mic. He turned up, like, over the radios. He turned up within like 5 minutes, pulled me to one side, said, listen, I'm about to throw you out of this competition. You're losing the plot. Get back in that room. You go isolate yourself for 10 minutes. And that's that. Now, when Gurdeep says that to me, I know, damn, I got to listen. And my pride was a little bit hurt, but I did it. Now, as I'm walking off, the dad comes over to me, pulls me back from one side from the shoulder, says, Mr. Singh, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. He shouldn't have come out. It's really bad. He should be listening to you. You're doing such a great job. And I literally turned around and I said to him in Punjabi, I was like, if you've got that much, like, if you've got that much knowledge, because look at me, you might be standing there probably thinking Singh is saying all these dirty swear words. Listen, mate, first and foremost, like, I don't care about profanity and things like that. This is something we worked a whole year towards. And, you know, if one person does something, 10 others are going to run out and do the same thing. And my neck's the one that's on the line, no one else's. So, you know, tell your kid, don't do that again and go back in. And, you know, to his credit, he then took my phone number, called me again afterwards, sent his apologies. His kids sent an apology. But by then it was too late. I said at the end of that competition, when I came out of that room 10 minutes later, like, Gurdeep literally looked at me and started laughing. And I wasn't laughing. I was close to tears. I was like, how could I lose it that much in front of, you know, there's 20, 30 people watching.
Yeah.
And I realized that stopped too much. Gone too far.
That makes sense. No, I get it. I think really, in that moment you probably realized, like, it was all starting to get to you, and it starts to grate on you more and more. The people start doing it year on year, that it's just not worth it anymore. I actually respect you more for doing that than actually carrying on and being like, oh, I could just bottle it up and let it out some other way. Like, don't do that.
I don't mind you know, like, Jazz, you said, is very right. Like, sometimes we really do need that validation of people showing some gratitude.
Of course,
and saying, you know, thank you for doing this. We do need that. But at the same time, I've never wanted that. What I wanted to see was full venues, no sharab, little kids, old grannies. I think, like, you know, all the comps do this, but we would make access space. There were certain tickets. There was 8 tickets a year you could only buy if you were in a wheelchair. Like, we'd have everyone come in, bring your grand. She can't move well, bring her in a wheelchair. We'd be like, let's get whole families out, whole families experiencing this. Let's get young kids really inspired by it. Let's get your olds inspired by it.
The thing is, Harvey, I know that you mean well, right? But if my nanny was there, my grandma, and she heard the sound of that bass, she'd have been like, where's the organizer? Tell him to turn the volume down now.
That's true.
Right?
So
be careful what you wish for, Harvey. I know for the ticket sales, be careful, my friend.
My mum only came to one. My mum only came to one competition. My dad never came to any. But my mum came to one competition and she kept earplugs in the whole time. Yeah. And she had a smile on her face. She said, "Bahut badhiya, theek, bahut badhiya laga." And I was like, great. But she told me before she comes, she goes, I'm not going to listen to any of this. Like, she does that when she goes to weddings, she has earplugs in. A lot of people do that now, right? So I know a lot of people feel that. I feel that. Year after year, I'd go into the booth and I'd be talking to people like Simon Berwick and I'd be like, Simon, man, Giza, can we please lower the bass? Please. And Simon would be like, Harvey, no, but Harvey, the bass is what makes us go for it. No, look, I'm happy if you can hear it like it's coming out of a tape deck. I think it's better like it's coming out of an old tape deck, right? That's good enough for me. And he was like, listen, when we've got 800 people in this venue and it's not a sound check, we need to have all these levels. And so that's why it was like, you know what, actually you have to have that. But so we really pushed it. For me, that's what I wanted to see. And when I realized that I'm now a negative force on these competition circles, take yourself out. Not going to stop. Not going to take, pack up my goalpost, my jumper goalpost and ball and walk home. That's when I said, okay, Simon Berwick and Isha Dillon, they took on Capital Bungalow from me. There was no buy sell involved. I just said, you don't want to run this comp for me? And they go, yep, great. So I'm not involved in putting any money in it. I don't have to pay any of the fines or dues or whatever. They took over it. They changed the logo branding. They ran it for 2 years, I think. And they have their own competitions in their own right as well anyway. But the only agreement we made was that if you guys don't want to do this anymore, it has to come back with me as part of the decision making who takes it on, because they have to understand the same thing we're trying to go for here.
So is that why you think the scene is sort of cooled a little bit and there's not much happening? Not only coronavirus, but also I think the last professional competition was 2018, and there was potential for something to happen in 2019. It didn't materialize, and I think now it's sort of really gone quiet. And I don't think it's the competition organisers' fault, but I just think that it's been in a bit of regression for a couple of years. I think the scene in general, because most people see if you go to TBS, you always predict the top three, and 9 times out of 10 you tend to get it. And the gap between the top three and the bottom is massive, like it's huge, and it just becomes a bit of an unfair monopoly sort of kind of thing. And I'm not sure if that's because people don't want to pick it up, or it gets too political, or etc. But do you think the scene is really dead and there's no real way back for it?
There's always a way back. It'll always cut. There'll be peaks and troughs with anything, right?
Yeah.
So at some point it will probably rise again, but I don't think. I think it's going to take something special for that to happen, because at the moment the culture that's infested everyone on that Bhangra comp scene, or over the last 5 years that it did, was all about what we've said repeatedly now. It just became about being the most athletic, perfect execution possible of a set of moves to the best mix.
You saw
boring. That's boring as hell. I don't want to go to a comp to watch that. That's boring. Why would you
especially not eight teams like that, and you're like, well, how do you pick between this now? Yeah.
Did you see the thing? There was the documentary put out on the BBC. Did you see that, Harvey? Bungalow,
Aston and UOB.
Yeah.
No, I never did. I heard about it, but I didn't actually watch it just because I don't have a TV.
That was actually a fair insight. So I showed that to my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, right? And I said to them, this is what it's like. What do you think? And they thought, I didn't know it was this competitive in the background. I didn't know it's so focused on this, rehearsals till late, etc. And it was sort of an eye-opener to them to think, is this what you guys did? I was like, yeah, we did that, but there was sort of more sociable aspects, and we weren't really that good. But there was more like enjoyment and memories coming out of it. No, it's true though. Like
I love that, Andy. No, the point. We weren't really that good.
The actual standard though. Thing is though, right? In all fairness to the kids at uni, the standard of their performances is really high. Like the teams that win or place is very, very high compared to how it was in 2012. And
or 13.
Massive. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that leap is massive. And I think, okay, we weren't that good, but we also have more memories that we did with socials afterwards. And a few of us still keep in touch with like a few of those people from back then. I don't know if these guys will in the future, because they're so committed to just the winning, just get through it and make sure you do it and forget the pain and all that stuff. Like I get it, but it seems like there's no real memory.
There's no focus. There's no focus on the journey. And let me give our listeners a really funny memory has popped into my head. So 2016, my last comp, we're all in London together. Indy, we've got the flats hired out. We've all got room allocations, which I've sorted out. And then I remember Manny and Qatar, 2 people in our team, who they go to M&S for hours. We don't see them. They come back, and you got to bear in mind we're staying for one night. Mainly, the comp is the next day, and then after that we're going to get pizza and just you have loads of dirty food after you do a comp. So we're going to have one breakfast. That was the point. It was one breakfast, and they come back with shopping for like a week. I remember they had a pineapple. I was like, when are we going to get pineapple? The pineapple really stands out in my head. And then they were in my room, and I was like, when are you going to get the pineapple? And then it got to like Raat, and then we did this crazy stretch session, and Qatar put on this like video about Mike Tyson, about how he intimidates people, and we're all there getting hyped about the comp. And then he cuts the pineapple, and then we have midnight pineapple, and we're like, yeah, man, this is like our thing, And then we had Sidhu. It's another guy on our team called Sidhu. He had these beetroot shots. This is really funny. So, there's a whole thing now about Bhangra, about, okay, how do you, on your side stage or a couple of minutes on, how do you get like ready, right? Pre-workout. And as a doctor, like I've tried all these things. Man. They were like, Jazz, try this, and this. And so that year in comp, I think we had
one beetroot shots and NO explode. The NO explode stuff was ridiculous. Like that pre-workout made my heart like skip beats. I swear to God. And I only took it once, Ben, because if you keep taking it, right, it stops working. So I'm like, okay, I took it once for one set, didn't sleep the whole night after we did it. And I was like, okay, this is the thing I'm taking on the day. And then Goran Sidhu said, let's take some beetroot shots. I was like, yeah, cool. Beetroot shots, cool. So we had them and Goran, what happened?
Right, so Harv, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the side effect of beetroot shoot is essentially when you pass urine 6 to 8 hours later, it looks like you're essentially passing blood. So I had a lot of phone calls from my team members, really worried, like, oh my God, I'm passing blood, man. I think we've went too hard. Because there is actually a medical condition, which, I get people coming, not Bungalow related, but say you guys went to the gym and you did 1,000 bicep curls. If you do enough exercise, your muscle will break down and it'll pass out of your kidneys and it looks like blood. It's muscle breakdown. It's a real condition. And so these guys are all really, really concerned that they're losing corn and Bungallow's done this to them and they're going to have to go to A&E. And I was like, boys, you had beetroot. Just relax, man. And it's these types of memories, right?
Those
these
are the memories you think about, man.
Where I look back and I think that was the best part of Bungalow. Even when we went to America, WBBC, okay, we didn't win, man. But being in New York together, freezing in the cold, going to the mix in Qatar, ripping his he did bad things, ripped his pants. These are all the memories, man. Yeah.
That's what I'm glad you're bringing all these things up, because that's what we always since day one we're telling people. You're not gonna appreciate what you're doing right now. But trust me, it's about the experience. It's about the camaraderie you've got. That's what it's about. You might fall out with all of these people 1 week later, 1 year later. It doesn't matter. The experience is about the right now and the memories it creates. And for me, obviously, the connection it makes with you and the Punjab. You have some connection now. Yes. Even you had some before, maybe you didn't, but now you got this solid connection. And that's the bit that went missing a lot. It's fun to hear that story from you guys, because seeing teams
that's the stuff that makes it real to you, right? It makes it more normal and happy. And stuff.
We saw so much stuff side stage happening, and there was one year where we started debating whether or not we should be doing testing, like urine testing. What are they all on? And we
taking steroids in that.
Okay. All I'm gonna say on this point, right? Again, not mentioning teams, not mentioning names. There are some people who did take some illicit stuff pre-comp, right? Yeah. And again, I've watched certain people, and I know exactly how nervous they are when they've done some comps. And some comps, they're just fully relaxed, which allows them to express themselves. And I'm like, this isn't natural, man. I've looked at you when you come off stage, and there's definitely something in your system, man. But
it's it's worse than that. There's obviously there's I think there was a few people who were definitely taking some class A drugs, and that was always a concern, obviously, because we didn't want it anywhere near around us, and we didn't want it at the venue or
you want to
be
promoting it.
And we definitely didn't want it to inspire others and stuff like that. But what can you do? Because at the end of the day, we weren't gonna be able to set up, instigate like urine testing for
USADA and everything. You started the UFC, let's go, right?
And that's what we're talking about. That's what we're trying to get away from. You can tell when someone's a bit chariya, they've had a little bit of nasha, they've got some intoxication. You can tell that wasn't as huge a problem for me as that's someone doing three cans of Red Bull can be in that same state, right? The issue for us was when it started tripping over. Maybe there's something a bit serious here, and that came about with people being, we are the best team, we are the greatest team. And the whole, winning is everything, boys. Nothing else will suffice. And that whole mentality scared the living daylights out of me. Mostly because I was like, if I take you right now, your entire team, and I plonk you in the middle of Jalandhar, you're all getting mugged before the end of the night.
Of course you are. 100%.
Right?
So
don't give me this because you got a chadar on and because you got a turle wali pag. You get Punjabi culture somehow, right? Most of them still to this day speak Tutti Punjabi, and that's not
absolutely.
That's not a criticism of like everyone's Punjabi ain't that great. My Punjabi ain't that great. But then stop acting the whole Billy Big Boys like we're in for the culture. You could supplant some teams now. Indy, that earlier question yours, the scene is pretty much dead now because you could take this out of being a Bhangra comp. You could make it into like a synchronized dancing comp of any genre. And the teams would rehearse moves to that genre of music, that genre of dance style, and still probably have a good chance of placing at those competitions, because it all became about how athletic you are, how great you are at executing, how good you are in synchronicity with other people, how much dedication you put to that. And like I said, that has absolutely nothing to do with the Bhangra comp. Bhangra comp's supposed to be that happened at the first capital, Greenwich.
Really?
Their
Okay.
captain said, we've all gone Gurdwara Matha Teked, had langar, and now
Right.
we're going to dogs.
Okay,
And I
okay.
said, are you serious? And he gave me loads of
Yeah,
prashad. He goes, "Main tere liye bhi prashad lianda, I brought prashad for you." I was like, no way. But then, you know, funny things that you saw happen at comps. Like, you know, your last comp, you guys said, when I got a message from Harnik, I think it was, saying, oh, one of our team members wants to wear a GoPro. Is that cool? And I was like, yeah, of course, go for it. It sounds fun to me. You know, whereas I know a lot of other organizers or a lot of other teams certainly frowned upon that and said, this is making a mockery of it. I'm like, I think this is brilliant. Right?
Documenting the story.
And the funny thing is, Harvey, I guarantee you, those people who are mocking it all watched that video. Like, it's not even a debate. They've all watched it. Everyone's seen it. Like,
the beautiful part of that video is actually when you see, I can't remember, Indy, if it's when we're going on stage or when we come off stage, and there's a room where we go through all the other teams. And there's just
stage, when we go on stage and you see everyone around
right. There's like, I think Fid's definitely in there. Fid's like, is it on? Is it on?
Yeah.
But there's so much PR. There's everyone's like fist bumping. Like, look, yes, we're competing. Look, what did we do? Look at the bit after that. We landed this great set. We're on this massive high. Indy's run to the front of the stage and like going, yeah, come on.
You know what?
I've never seen Indy that hyper.
Wait,
before you come in.
I did that. No, I have to say this, right? People mock me for that to this day, right? But I did that because I've broken my ankle in the 214 set and I couldn't do it, right? For these guys. So I had to step down. Then I tried to compete in WVBC. I had the same ankle issue and I wasn't good enough. Fine. Then I tried doing Folk Stars and I still wasn't good enough. So for me, that set was like redemption. It was my 4th attempt to get into the team. I made it. I did it. I had such an outpour of emotion afterwards. I was like, oh my God, I've actually done it. Like, I kept thinking, am I going to get injured? Am I going to hurt myself, etc. So that outpour for me was massive. And I was like, this means a lot to me. It was 4 years in the making since my last professional set. So that meant a lot.
Indy, I loved you for it, because before that, for UOB and for Ankile, that was my role, man. I was the shouty kind of guy. If you watch the video for Folk Stars when we won, that was me, man. I was like jumping off the stage in Birdkin and stuff. Then you did it, and on a whole different level. But the memory I was going to say is, then we went backstage into the changing area. I think it was NS's speaker. We put our own music on there, and we just started doing like Harvey, like the non-controlled Bhangra, like the random Bhangra. And we were just so happy that, and I'd say in all my Bhangra competitions, the pre-placing time is the best like high I've ever had in like Bhangra. It's that bit, man. When you just come off stage and you don't know about the placings, you're just with your team. How many jumpion do you give, man? How many hugs do you give? You just hug everybody. You're like, oh man, I love you. And that time I shouted at you, I didn't mean it, and I love you. And no, it was great. It was really, really great, man.
It's interesting you say that. One of the capitals we did think about. I'm not saying we seriously considered it. Obviously, we didn't. But at the same time, we actually talked about it for a good 10 minutes about what we should do is, when the last team's gone on, and then when the exhibition performance has happened, go on stage and say thank you and good night, everyone.
Yeah, no placings.
And then we tell all the teams we're packing up and going home. I don't know about you lot. And literally taxi, put all the judges in a taxi and just send them away and say, when the videos go up, you can all judge yourselves. We didn't seriously consider it. I shouldn't pretend that, but we thought it would be a really great, like, that would be a fun joke to play on people, to explain to them, we're not here for the competition bit, but we know that's the only way to get you lot out for it, the teams competing, is to drive for it. And half your friends come out because they want to support you. I don't mind things like what Indy did, Ram Joshi at Imperial College. He used to do that a lot as well. Like, he'd give a lot of pump to the crowd as soon as their performance is finished. One of my very good friends, Sahib Singhpulni from GCC, he's infamous because he did it on stage when they won when they won TBS, and he was part of Leicester's team. When they were announced winners and they pick up the trophy, some people started booing because they were a live set, they didn't like them, and he jumped on stage going like this, jumping around with his middle fingers up. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but like,
I remember he did the heel click. You remember what was that team from North America? SGPD. No, SGPD heel click. I remember him doing that. I wasn't in Bhangra at that point. That was one I went to watch, and I was like Sahib. After that, I kind of looked at him and I thought, wow, what an idiot. But at the same time, I was thinking,
I was thinking, you know, he's a bit of a rebel in this guy. He don't care. There's like this many thousand people in front of him. He gave it all that. That's actually what Punjabi folk dancing and Punjabi culture is about.
Passion. Coming back to your key word.
Exactly.
Also, reference point, rewind a bit, Harvey. The reason why they were booed was because everyone knew that they had dancers from SGPD and they weren't from Leicester Union. Like, there is that as well. There is that other layer on top.
No. The only reason, listen, there were people in Bhangra who knew stuff, right? People in teams who knew stuff, but the audience, because I can tell you the people I knew in the audience, my age of people, and they were in the audience and we were in the audience right at the back. The people who were booing because they didn't even have any music, just had that idiot singer and the dolly. And that's what they were all shouting. So you're right to say what you say, Indy, but trust me, that's not why people were booing. People were booing because they thought that there was some sort of fix and a team that clearly should have placed last because they did something that wasn't on the, you know, no one was expecting it, were they?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so when they do something like that, you haven't come out to see that. A lot of people booed.
Yeah, and if you're not a hardcore Bhangra person, then live isn't going to be your medium, is it? A mix, songs that you know, jazzy beat, nag, like that's what people want to see, and they want to have a good time. And certain Bhangra competitions, you get people dancing in the stalls and things. And
I mean, just want to add addition I wanted to make on the story. I don't want people to get their like violins out, and they won't. It's funny. It's funny what you said about the story you said about Kartar and who was the other guy? They went out at
Mani.
Yeah. So these two individuals go out at night. They come back late. Was it you said or something?
Pineapple. They came back with a pineapple.
Came back with a pineapple. Yeah. We didn't know where they went. They just disappeared.
Every comp, and I kid you not, every single comp we did, the university one's Capital, where we had the pre-night mixer. We would finish washing the dishes at about 2:30, 3 a.m. in the hotel bar. So it would be me, Gurdeep, and then any one of about 5 or 6 other people who were volunteers who hadn't fallen asleep yet. We'd be in the bath washing dishes because we were trying to save. We were losing so much money every comp. We tried to save money as much as we could. So after the first comp where we'd gone to a Nando's, we started booking our own little venues, buy the food from a caterer, get them to come cater it, but we'd provide the utensils. So we just went out to like Argos, bought all these like crockery, like actual cutlery and crockery. I've still got it to this day. So we got like 150 plates and 150 knives and forks and spoons and dessert plates.
New business.
Do you know what? Like we've used it since then. Whenever we do anything like a dinner or something like that for our the charity I volunteer for and other groups and things like that. But it's just it paid for itself after the first comp anyway. That's what the caterer was charging us for cutlery. So we did all that, and it's just always makes me laugh because we would be up till that late, and the next morning like people would see us at 9 or 10 and not realize, they've been in a bath in a travel lodge, dishes, right?
Washing Pandey, full seva.
And geezers are out going to 24-hour Tesco's buying pineapple.
All right. Comps are a very special space. And the final question from me,
I need to move the topic on because I'm aware of time. But yeah, go on. Last question. Go on.
Last Bhangra question. SPD. You aware of this team? This American team. When they went to India, they did live set. And they didn't place, and there's this whole ruckus about what's your take on their performance, what happened? Do you think it was spite or do you think it was genuine, all these things they were saying?
I thought their performance was very good. I don't think it was spite, but definitely Punjab. Okay, so every Punjab competition, like anything that happens in Punjab is up for corruption. And that doesn't matter whether the team has come from Balat or Canada, America, or if it's come from Amritsar or from Patiala, right? They have that in them, and they're going to continue to have that in them. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some bias and prejudice against the scoring that happened there. I thought it was just a great thing to see that kind of thing start to happen. I believe VP took a team to a Punjab comp, right?
Yep.
Basta Punjab. Yeah.
And I thought that would be good for people to try and experience that. The choreo of Josh Valetti and that JVD Jasteep, he's now a doctor. Like Jasteep, he tried doing stuff like that. He went out to Punjab a number of times, and he would stay at Ropar College, which was the college his mum had been at, I think. And so he met people there. He did loads of dance, learned loads of dance choreos with them, tried to get into their teams to go into comps and stuff as well.
Wow.
I think. But the idea was we needed to have that connection. That was another thing that's a regret for me. It would have been good to have made that connection, boost people together to not just have this, this simple connection to Punjab through your culture and through what your dance form is and what your music tastes are, but actually go back to the place, see what it looks like, see how it's behaving now, and that kind of stuff. And that's something we very rarely do. And that's something that is a real regret for me. It's strange because I've been able to make that happen from my Sikh studies side of life, but from the Bhangra side of life, it didn't happen. And to be honest, it should have happened from the Bhangra side quicker.
Naturally, more organically.
Yeah, where I could encourage people to go to Punjab, check stuff out, even organize tours and trips. And from the Sikh studies side of stuff, we've actually started organizing tours and trips for Sikh study students to go out to Punjab, go visit universities and historic colleges and see places of historical importance and, see the Punjab generally. That should have happened through the comps much quicker. And we didn't push it hard enough. I just started thinking after those early lectures, I'm just going to bore people with this stuff. But it would have been great. Like there's one part of our trip is going to Hoshiarpur. And in one part of Hoshiarpur, there's a settlement from the Harappan civilization. So that goes back to like 4000 BC. And it's one of the earliest known, the Harappan civilization, the Indus civilization. They're the earliest known kind of groups of people anywhere in the world to use irrigation channels and settle and start farming. So to see that in the flesh in Hoshiarpur, I think is like a nice treat and something good that brings you even more connection. Now you understand how Punjab's people are a heck of a lot more when you see that, wow, this is the kind of houses they lived in and this is the kind of ground, it's a proper archaeological site. It's not clear, but you suddenly realize, wow, this goes back thousands of years. This ain't
real history.
Yeah, Punjabi culture and music doesn't start with Gurdas, man.
Okay, right. If there's one snippet we're going to take from that, Indy, I like that, man.
I'll take that. I need to move the conversation on. Harvey, obviously, we've brought you on because there's the farmers' movement happening as well in India, and the massive protests that have now happened, and there's been a lot of media exposure recently about it. One thing I've noticed is there's not a place on social media where people were talking about this from start to finish, what happened, how it got here, etc. I think there needs to be some context behind all of it, and the person that I know that's well versed in this is yourself. So could you just give us a bit of like a rundown? I'm aware of time, and I know you tend to go over time a little bit, but I just feel like people need to know the actual ins and outs of what's happened, why it's got here, and how it all started. Really, I know your tendency is to go way further back, but try and curb it in a little bit and just let us know really your honest opinions and thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'll definitely rein it in sense of let's just start with the 20th century. Let's just look at the last 100 years. That's enough. Sure. So from the 1920s onwards, what you see in the subcontinent is the rise of two major political groups: the Indian National Congress, which leads the charge towards the creation of the Indian nation state, and the All India Muslim League, which leads the charge towards creating the state of Pakistan. By 1947, their hard work over the previous generation, they'd spent 70 years building that up. But from the 1920s to the 1940s, that's when they visibly become this force that's leading down a certain road. And that bore fruit for them by 1946, when the British Empire, following World War II and are now going to be leaving the subcontinent, they start to look at what that boundary is going to look like, who's going to take over those places administratively, what kind of laws are they going to implement, how are those laws going to be enforced, what's the judicial system going to look like. All of those things come up, and the two best cases on the table were placed by Indian National Congress for the Indian state and All India Muslim League for Pakistan. And it's no coincidence that significant people in these movements were trained in Oxbridge. And, Jawaharlal Nehru, first Prime Minister of India, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, first Prime Minister of Pakistan, both study here in the United Kingdom at Oxbridge unis. There's no coincidence behind that. So the whole setup of India from day one, from 1947 onwards, was established with this binary system. That binary system was that you're creating a new nation state. Everything has to be about the national interest. So essentially what you're seeing is the rise of what's ultimately going to inevitably become a fascist state, because it's going to be about the nation first, culture, community, religion second. Your identity first has to be to the flag. It has to be to the new nation state. Now, some people would argue, that's fair enough, blah, blah, blah. Some people would say, no, that's the opposite of what it should be. It doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum. What you find is that the most vocal proponents against that system in the Indian nation state are the Sikhs of Punjab. Now, I'm choosing my words carefully there. It's not just Sikhs, and it's not just Sikhs of Punjab, but they're the major vocal mouthpieces. Sikhs based in the Punjab. And Punjab geographically was one that seemed like it was going to lose out the most. So by the 1950s, when language started to become homogenized, which is part of the India project, homogenization of languages, everybody, if you're going to have one flag, you're going to be speaking one language, you're going to have one dominant culture, and you can keep your subcultures underneath that, but they have to know their place as being subservient. So the Indian nation state started pushing Hindi and English as the national languages. Local languages, regional languages would stay where they were, but they would be relegated to being, secondary languages. And in the 1950s, by 1955, certainly, this becomes a physical movement, the Punjabi Suba Lehr, which is to create a carved out geographical space within the Indian nation state, which was pushed as a republic. So it's supposed to be, in line with what France and the United States is to a certain extent. So individual states are supposed to have a certain amount of control. That Punjabi Suba Lehr pushes for, we want to have a carved out geographical territory where Punjabi is the predominant language, where court systems, where paperwork in banks and everywhere else you see signage on roads will not start to be changed over. It will still predominantly be in Punjabi, that our culture and our customs will be allowed to remain. That movement lasted about 10 years and some. I mean, it doesn't technically really end. It climaxes in 1966 with what's called the Punjab Reorganization Act. And when that act was signed, what it did was it had the opposite consequence of what the Punjabi Suba Lehr started with. And that was, rather than carving out a Punjabi territory that was still quite significant and large, by 1966, it carved it down into the small, the diamond shape we know as Punjab today. So Punjab as a region in 1966 is 14% of the geographical land space that Punjab was in 1849 when the British annexed it. So
14%.
Shrunk that much basically is what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Wow,
you have
the small size.
You have the carving out of, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, parts of Rajasthan, all these places come into being and take away from Punjab. So, the most famous recipient, negatively of this is Ambala. Ambala is not part of Punjab, but everyone there speaks Punjabi and still has Punjabi customs.
Absolutely.
Now, up until the farmers' crisis, a lot of us had started thinking that Haryanavis had moved on and had become Indian nationalists, but the Punjabi farmers' crisis has now shown us no, Haryanavis are still there.
Clearly not.
They're still there. They're still rebels in what Punjab was. So from 1966 onwards, for about the next 5-6 years, I mean, there's obviously loads of other things running in parallel with this, and there's loads of other factors. So I wouldn't want any listeners to take this away as gospel. This is like take this with a pinch of salt version, basically. But, from 1966 onwards, you had this emerging then of, well, what the hell do we do now in Punjab? They gave us something of what we were asking for, but we got a lot less than we were asking for because we kind of got played. We didn't understand the system that would be in place. And more importantly, Punjab lost its capital city at that time. So Punjab's capital city is Chandigarh. Chandigarh is not part of Punjab state. It's what's called Union Territory. It's the shared capital of both Haryana and Punjab. But in Union Territory, Union Territory rules apply. Punjab state rules don't apply. That's why when you go and see Chandigarh, it looks a million miles away from even Ludhiana.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, loads of these things happened. The biggest part here at the exact same time in 1966 is the emergence of river water redistribution. So the 2.5 river waters that were left in the Punjab, Satluj, Beas.
Let me just stop you there. I need to pop to the loo, but you guys carry on. Okay.
The 2.5 river waters that remain in the Punjab, in East Punjab, Indian Punjab, the Satluj, the Beas, and the Ravi to some extent, they started to have their water channels being redistributed and redirected. So you have a significant amount of water that is redistributed to Rajasthan, for example, to Haryana in particular. And this meant that a lot of Punjabi people themselves saw this as them as being second-class citizens. Why is our natural resource, pretty much the only natural resource we have and that's being exploited, why is that being redistributed to the rest of the country? Yet what the rest of the country has in natural resources or investment is not being redistributed back to us. At this exact same time, you also then have the instigation of what's called the Green Revolution. Essentially, the Green Revolution is the introduction of high-yield variety seeds. So these are seeds into the marketplace, into the farming system that provide a higher yield of crop, but by their very nature, by their design, they demand more resources. They're more water intensive. They require stronger pesticides and insecticides to keep them from being eaten away. They require greater mechanization. So tractors become commonplace by the 1980s because of the Green Revolution. All of these things basically in a very short space of time massively changed the way that farming operated in Punjab, and farming, made up for the vast majority of the GDP of the Punjab state. At the exact same time, you've got a mass drain of people leaving the state and moving to the United Kingdom in particular, but also traveling to USA, Canada permanently, going on 5-year visas, but then never coming back, calling half their villages. So you've got a brain drain of people leaving also. So add all of this together. Politically, what we see is in 1973, the drafting of a document known as the Anandpur Sahib Resolution, in Punjabi, Anandpur Sahib da Mata. And it's given that name because it was drafted at Anandpur Sahib, and the people drafting it were predominantly Sikh and were great thinkers of the Sikh academia at the time. And they basically drafted a document saying that Punjab needs to be treated as part of this republic. And if this is a true federal republic, we need to be given state powers in the way that the Constitution had originally, promised. What they laid out. And the Anandpur Sahib resolution was then very quickly starting to be twisted as these people are segregatory, they're secessionists. At this same time in the 1970s, you've got the Indo-Pak War that gives birth to Bangladesh. That's a huge, that's a huge impact on that. Pakistan losing that war and losing to Bangladesh is a huge blow on their psyche, but more importantly, ups the game between India and Pakistan's intel wars. So their intelligence agencies now start to up the level of their own wars. They start having huge proxy wars rather than physical wars. And Punjab being central to that becomes the place where you're going to run all those wars. By 1978, a watered down version of the Anandpur Sahib resolution is put forward again. And that leads us all the way up to 1984, which is a very big year that everyone knows about from the Sikh world. But people who don't know, it's basically renowned as in June, there was an invasion of the Darbar Sahib, which is the capital city, the headquarters of the Sikh people. And over the course of about 10 days, the Indian army invaded and wiped out a lot of people who were there. The lead group that was wiped out, though, led by a man by the name of Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, were targeted and identified because they were leaders of what was known as the Dharm Yudh Morcha. Now, the Dharm Yudh Morcha begins in 1982, but it was just the formalization of what the Anandpur Sahib resolution had started out in 1973. The Dharm Yudh Morcha, forget its name for a minute, it had one aim and one aim only, which was that we want to see the resolutions of the Anandpur Sahib Mata, we want to see these resolutions being brought into practice. We want to see them given life. That was the only demand of the Dharm Yudh Morcha. And they had huge protests from 1982 onwards, all the way up to 1984. The next stage of the protests had elevated in 1984 that on the 31st of May of 1984, all shipments of grain were going to be stopped from leaving any port or mandi in Punjab. So they had done what are called like bands, rail roko, so stop trains from going, shut towns down.
Yeah.
They'd done all of these
Lockdown.
over the course of, complete lockdowns over 2 years. And there was, it was massively supported by Punjabi people, by citizens, but it still had met with no response. There was no recourse from the state, from the government. And so by 1984, they'd elevated these protests to, right, let's hit them where it hurts. No more wheat going out. And because the Anand Prasad resolutions are all about economics, they're about river water redistribution, they're about fair pricing for farm produce, they're about investment into alternative industries in Punjab. The resolutions are then about Punjabi language and customs being given respect and right of place in Punjab as a state. Those demands are not religious at all. And those are the demands. Those are the demands that are being put forward. They're met with the response of the invasion. So it was no coincidence that the Darbar Sahib invasion starts on 1st June, when all of the mandis and the ports were going to close to wheat export on 31st of May. So that leads us up to the farmers' crisis of today. And someone might be saying, well, how do you connect 84 to today? Well, the last 37 years have been us stuck in a fear psychosis, we call it. So we've written on this extensively at Naujawani.com, but it's a fear psychosis, which is that people were so shocked, so visibly shocked by what they saw with, armored tanks rolling through the Darbar Sahib, with the loss of tens of thousands of lives, mostly burnt without any records, no bodies being identified.
People just missing, basically.
Yeah, people permanently missing. All of those things happening gave us a great shock. And everything since then, while there were pockets of resistance that were significant, they were still in the minority. They were small. People would still rather get themselves out to another country. This country is not for us anymore. Or the ones who couldn't get out. The way I say it, you either get out or you're trying to get out. There's no one else left there, right, in Punjab. And the ones who couldn't get out just make peace with, well, this is what life is now. You're stuck in a fear psychosis. I don't want my kids to die. I don't want to die. I don't want my wife being subjected to sexual assault and rape. I don't want my money taken away. Let's just keep putting up with it.
And be quiet.
And up until the late 1990s, that was still going along in a way that you could fathom, where it wasn't a huge problem. But by the late 1990s, and then definitely by the early 2000s, suddenly people started realizing that the water table levels had dropped to drastic levels, to the extent, when you have to keep making new motors, so you have to bore new holes in the middle of your fields to pull natural water supply up to irrigate your fields. When you have to, in 1999, we had a motor put in where I physically with my own eyes saw them bore down 40 feet. Whereas in 2017, we had to put another motor in somewhere and we bored down 200 feet. 200 feet in the space of 18 years. When you,
and guys, to give people a sense here, Harvey actually does farming, so this is coming from a genuine place.
He's actually been there and seen the whole process from start to finish, how to do the full farming effects in Punjab.
Yeah. And what we've tried to do in that 20-30 year space ourselves was try to move off. So we moved away from resource intensive crops a long time ago. So we moved away from paddy, rice. We moved away from wheat as much as we could as well. And we started pushing towards vegetable crop rotation. I had a great idea 10 years ago that didn't work, because my wife and I, when we first got married, tried to live in Punjab. We spent 6 months there.
Wow. How was that?
It was fun. It was great. I'm going to do it again at some point in my life when my daughter's old enough and I'm no longer responsible. I'm going to Punjab. If my wife comes, great. If she doesn't, I can't spend the rest of my life living in the cold. I've got to go to Punjab. It calls me though. It calls me, and right. I'm not trying to build it for the next generation. I know after me, it will probably all go to pot. But I also know that my grandfather was saying that when he was still alive, that after me and my brother are gone, this is all going to go to pot. But it didn't. My dad picked up the pieces. So who knows? Someone will pick up the pieces, right? But when you see it out there, what you realize, and what we saw over the last 20, 30 years personally, and then through reading as well, was that fear psychosis embedded itself into people's brains. And rightly so. When you see everybody else is now driving around in BMs, coming back to Punjab, building giant kotis, like giant, houses, mansion-like houses, drop in £500-600 on wedding shopping just for suits. That's a conservative amount. I know people who spend much more than that. So when you see that, you start thinking, well, let's get one of our kids out to the West, and then we'll have real money as well, instead of having this useless money that we're living on here in Punjab. So that fear psychosis embeds itself further. You allow it to fester, you allow it to continue. The farmers' protest we're seeing today, in my personal opinion, is an outpouring of that last 70 years of build-up of protest that has continued, that climaxed and culminated to one extent in 1984 with the invasion of Darbar Sahib, but has now shown that was just one climax, and we are now seeing the real outpouring of what that was about. If you look at it this way, up to 84, it kind of became known, or the perception of it was that this is a religious movement. This is just those.
Absolutely.
It's just
terrorists,
those
Sikh terrorists. Yeah.
That's what it became about, right? Now, what now you're seeing is probably what we should have tried harder to do. And it's not that people didn't try, but it just didn't work. But now you're seeing a perception of this is about Punjab as a state, Punjabi as people, and saying that we are not being treated as equal citizens. In fact, there are many people across this entire subcontinent who aren't being treated as equal citizens, that multinational corporations have already come in and taken over. These three laws are just they're the straw that broke the camel's back. That's what
tip of the iceberg.
Are. They're the bits that broke it. And so when people left their homes to go out and protest at first, they were going because of the three laws needing to be repealed. But make no mistake about it. Make sure you keep this in. If those three laws are repealed tomorrow, farming in Punjab is finished anyway. Makes no difference. Farming is done.
Is that because of the water thing that you said earlier?
Not just water. Ecologically, when you don't do crop rotation, the quality of your soil. So when you have crop rotation, you're changing the different vegetables you're growing all the time. When you move away from even growing vegetables and all you're doing is wheat and paddy, and then you have to burn the stubs of those to keep it going all year round just to make your money back, right? When you're doing things like that, you destroy the quality of the soil. Now, the quality of
next
soil,
cycle.
The quality of soil the whole world over has been degrading for decades, if not centuries. And there's huge organizations that are set up just to do this. In fact, the BBC had a major report on the quality of soil in the United Kingdom just about 3 weeks ago, on the BBC website about the UK soil. And the UK soil has massively lost its quality. There were a huge number of laws passed in the last 3 months in the United Kingdom that are now going to benefit farmers, taking away subsidies that meant that they had to continue to make everything farmland or land for cattle. They're now going to be allowed to leave some land fallow so that it becomes swampland, so that it becomes marshland. That all provides you with an ecosystem that helps keep the quality of your soil strong. It helps
keep sustainable.
It keeps things sustainable. It means that your water is starting to find natural spaces to flow and go. We don't have that in Punjab. We don't have the forethought for it. We have it in small buckets. We have it in small places and pockets. I'm not denying that, but for a place like Punjab, and I'm talking about now even West Punjab, the Pakistani Punjab, it requires a level of international level of policy on how you're going to control that land and the water that goes there. At the moment, they're traversing between floods, massive floods that completely flood people's homes and farmland and completely makes the land worthless and the crop they've got worthless, to having, lengthy droughts and having to go further down to pull more water out to water your crops because there hasn't been enough rain. So they're on the extremes. They're suffering from the same thing everyone's suffering from in the world in climate change. And these laws are obviously not helping. I want to see them repealed, but I want to see 10 times more than that. Them being repealed is nothing. We need to see alternative investments into Punjab. We need for alternative industries. We need to see.
You mean for specifically employment hubs? So you're saying, because that's an interesting point. If okay, farming ends, because what we're saying, the bigger problem here is the ecosystem and the sustainability to actually farm. So when you as a farmer there, you see people, are they in a position? I don't know what the average age is of a farmer there, but do they have the time to sort of jump ship and upskill in something else and go into something else? Is that a real possibility, or what do you see happening if these people can't farm as a livelihood? How is it they're getting an income?
Okay, so I don't see any of the farmers going into alternative industries. I see their children, their offspring, and the youth, the ones who are all graduating from these universities, going into these jobs. Punjab still has a huge brain drain. There's some beautiful universities now in Punjab. They have some great postgraduate programs. They have, people being trained in absolutely everything. And then when they leave, they have zero jobs. There's no business parks. Yeah. There's no industrial spaces for them to go into to work. Even if you're talking about, if you qualify as a doctor, where are you going to work? Private practice. You're going to need some heavy money investment to set up your own private practice. Or, there's none of this investment or thought process that takes place. And that is the fault of the state at two levels, the central government and the state government. The state government has yo-yoed between Prakash Badal's Shromani Akali Dal in alliance with the BJP and the Captain Amrinder Singh's Congress Party. It's yo-yoed between them for 25 years now. They are always in cahoots with what's going on in central government. Because since 1984, Delhi realized it cannot allow Punjab to do what it wants. It must always be in control of what Punjab is doing. That is not propaganda. That's not out there. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's clear for everyone to see. And there's almost no thinkers or academics or writers you'll come across who will disagree with that point.
So then if you look from the government's agenda, then let's look at their strategy. So what you're saying essentially is, although people on paper have great degrees, by not providing a ecosystem that supports them, they're then forcing these people, like you said, us, like an example, to migrate out of India, leave Punjab, and set up lives elsewhere. Is that their strategy, or to just be a jobless state where either you are farming or doing low skilled work, or yes, you leave an exodus, the country?
Entirely, it's a mass. You're seeing a mass exodus. We have been seeing a mass exodus, but when you do have people who have a skill, have a talent, who are qualified as such, who gain a diploma, a postgrad certificate in something, and they've got something to offer, it's not unheard of, but it's very rare that they will stay within the state or within the country to do something. They will almost always go elsewhere because there's no place in the state for them to do that. Those places don't exist. If you want to see a great example of this, because most of the time, being Punjabi or South Asian even, most of us will think of doctors, lawyers and accountants straight away, or engineers.
Absolutely, man.
Let's think of some other places. My wife is a fully qualified and trained museum curator and archivist.
Wow.
And when we went to Punjab, one of the jobs we then applied for was the SGPC, Shromani Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, that controls all of Punjab's historic Gurdwara of importance, and it controls, quite importantly, the budgets that come into Darbar Sahib and places like that, and they spend that on prachar and maintaining these places. The SGPC has a gallery that's known as a museum. It's not really a museum, it's just a gallery of artwork, but they do have a great number of artifacts. Now, when we went there in 2008, there had been no curator for a year and a half by that point. So we put forward a presentation, we did a full CV and letter of application for her to meet with the high up bods and for her to apply to take on that role as curator, or at least as deputy curator, somewhere in there, right? She was working at the British Museum at the time, and it was like, she comes with a decent.
Yeah, she comes with a good CV. So,
yeah, comes with a good CV. Punjabi strong. She did her postgrad at SOAS in London. So it was like, she ticks a lot of boxes. Let's see. It didn't even get past stage one, and the stage one was, who are you? That's how Punjab operates. Who are you? Like, who's going to vouch for you right now? Which high-up person is going to call me to say, yeah, let them through, right? Right. And that is how it operates in every industry, in every system. Now, there's a way around that. You just drop a few, 10,000 rupees, a few tens of thousands of rupees, and move your way up. Now, you'd have to do that whether someone from higher up vouched for you or not anyway, right? But if they don't vouch for you, you could do that and go up higher stages. But who's going to do that? We certainly weren't going to do that. And she didn't even want the job anyway. It was me. That's why I'm saying we. It was me who was pushing it, saying, let's stay in Punjab. Come on, you'll get a decent job here.
There's a job.
The pay is like £500-600 a month. We'll be lodging it here on that. Forget the pen. I'll come live with you here in Amritsar. We'll lodge it. We live in a hotel every night. This is awesome. Go Darbar Sahib every day, fast Sadiwar in the morning. This is wicked, right? What more could we want? You'll get to see all the historic objects that no one's seen in 100 years. Brilliant.
So even that example is not based on merit, is what you're saying. And to touch on that point, when you look at that, are you saying that's unique to Punjab, or is that India as a whole, this kind of backhanders type thing? And if specifically with India, Punjab, then where does
India as a whole? Come on, guys.
Okay, so then in Punjab, then what part of our culture is championing that? Where does that evolve from?
Do you know what? Because we can't make this so black and white. Obviously, I know we're cut for time. There's only so much we can include in a podcast like this, right? Let's not make it too black and white. There's pockets of resistance even to something like that within Punjab. That we had one of the greatest DCs in Nawashahar 15 years ago by the name of Kishan Kumar. Kishan Kumar was the most amazing district commissioner DC that we could ever have. He was district commissioner for a 5-year straight pitch, and he never took a penny. You saw this guy walking to the share in his chappala every single day. He was not corrupt. So you get these people who try and change the system. When I was talking to all my cousins and my friends out there when we were there, and Kishan Kumar was in charge, and I was like, "Dekho, ide magar sanu lagna chahiye." They say, "But ek banda ki kar sakta?" They were still stuck in fear psychosis. Fear psychosis.
What can one man do, Indy? What can one man do? What difference can one man make?
He's just one guy. You're not going to be able to beat the system. If you help him, fine. How are you going to get past the Thana at Phagwara? Like, one of my cousins is an inspector in Phagwara, and he would say stuff like that. You're even going to get past our Thana, mate. Like, you could be Krishan Kumar, don't matter. It doesn't mean anything. Now let's look at other states. Yeah, it's the same across India, but it's not black and white, is it? Do you know who's been the most successful state? Bihar. Bihar state chief ministers have managed to get them. I mean, they're by no means are they in a good place. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he took them from here and got this much out of the central government for them. The same goes for other states. You could say the same, arguably, for Maharashtra. You could say the same for Haryana to a certain extent. And what you got to remember is different political parties that are in charge in different states will operate in different ways. So if you've got a BJP-led state government in a country where the BJP is in charge at Delhi over the whole country, that's that they're going to only do what Delhi says. But if we go elsewhere, you will find pockets of resistance. You do find heavy investment. Look at Bangalore. Look at the investment there. Look at the heavy investment of the steel industries in places. So they do invest in places. Central government did invest in places, but they were selective about where that investment took place. And my closing statement on this is Punjab is in dire straits. It has been for a long time. It's not going to die and it's not going to disappear. Right? That's what people need to get out of their fear psychosis. Punjab has seen over thousands of years every invasion you could imagine. Alexander the Great came there and we still sent him packing, right? So if Ahmad Shah Abdali came there 300 years ago and wiped out at one point 1/3, the estimates are 1/3 to 1/2 of the entire Sikh population at that time. We're 30 million strong now, bro. Right? You can send whatever you want. We ain't dying.
We had Baba Deep Singh Ji then, but definitely.
If you want to, so my final statement on that was, in Punjab, India is in massive dire straits, but it won't die away. It's just, are we going to be part of the solution, or are we going to be the generation that talks about it, and future generations are going to have to work? Are we going to be the ones who are happy to be the giants on whose shoulders future generations can stand, or do we want to have our names and our faces on all the awards ceremonies and all those things? Punjab, India's saving grace, after all of that and all of that hatred, Punjab, India's saving grace is that it is not Pakistan Punjab. You think things are bad in East Punjab, go look at West Punjab. That's all I'm going to say on that. No one wants to talk about that, because Pakistan does not talk about its country very well at all publicly. And if you see the state of farming and you see the state of illiteracy in West Punjab, and how their culture was diluted and completely decimated to the extent that it is almost unheard of to now speak Punjabi in Lahore. that
Wow.
if you take that into account, suddenly India, Punjab don't look too bad. We're still, and that's where you have to draw.
Context.
Yeah, you have to draw that common. You have to say, what's that common denominator then? Sekhya, we're the ones who are supposed to be the givers of something special to the world. So it's about time we stood up and started giving it.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Cheers, Harvey. We appreciate
Says a man who ran Bhangra comps. Right. We stayed.
Successfully.
Was that short enough that there's enough there that you've got?
That's
good
enough there,
on the
honestly.
farmers process?
That's enough there that I think we can give out to people to give them a bit of context behind why this has happened. I think that's important.
Absolutely. And I think understanding Punjab, I mean, that's a topic in itself. One thing I
Yeah.
will say, Indy, before I hand it back to you to get to the quick fire round, is I think my listeners will agree, Harv, we need another podcast at some point where let's just deep dive on Naujawani. I'd love to get into that and the impetus that got you to make it. And we were just talking about the word itself, Naujawan versus Naujawani, the other day, and how much we talked about that. So definitely we'll have another podcast on that. We won't touch that today because there is just masses to go into
No, that's cool. I'm sure there'll be more times and more spaces where you guys want to do stuff. So leave it for a long time in the future. I've got 3 names I'm going to send you when we close today. And you guys carry on doing what you're doing, build your audience and keep plugging away. And whenever in the future you think, okay, now's a good time to bring him back in, bring me back in.
Brilliant, Harvey. All right, some quick fire questions, okay?
Yep.
One's Bungalow related, one's sort of Punjabi related, I'd say, all right? So it's Bungalow related ones I've got.
So
First
framing for Harv. First thing pops in your head. Don't think about it too much. Not more than 1 or 2 words.
Okay. First thing that comes in your head, okay? Right. Best Bungalow set you've seen in the UK?
Ankile TBC 2016.
Yes! Sorry.
Yes!
Favorite Bungalow set you've ever seen across the world?
Shivchand, Nawashar. Shivchand School 2009.
Yep. John Amor. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Best Bhangra dancer in your opinion across the world?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Say that again.
Best Bhangra dancer you've ever seen across the world?
Dancer?
Yeah.
No comment.
Okay. All right, fine.
No, you said what comes into my head. Literally, it's a blank. So I can't say anything.
All right. Okay. Sub-segment or Kunda segment?
Kunda segment.
Ooh. Jumra segment or Luddi segment?
Luddi segment.
Okay, and one random one. What's your favorite Sikh university? And don't be biased.
Favorite? None of them.
There you go. The man says it with a straight face. There you go.
Indy, do you remember when you were at QM? What did I used to say? I never went to Sikh-sog. I'm advising all of you, don't go Sikh-sog. Spend your tuition fee wisely. Go get your parai done. Sit in the libraries. Go home with a degree.
Yeah, but you also said, I'm running a Sikh-sog class I'm running a Sikh studies class if anyone wants to come to. I was like, yeah, I'll come, right?
Yeah, good. Come to the Sikh studies class if you've got an hour and a half to spare. Don't waste your life. Don't waste your life in Sikh-sogs arguing about whether we should eat meat or not, or whether or not we should do this or not, or why we should keep gears or not. That bullshit that you got 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds doing when they should be studying in higher education.
Got it. All right. And Skaran, do you want to take this round or shall I?
I don't have them to hand, Indy.
Okay, fine. I'll take it. All right.
Nice
Harvey,
and fast.
Mr. Singh's or Rockies?
Rockies.
Ooh.
I'm a Southall boy, man. Rockies.
Okay.
Marnock or Bindrakia?
Bindrakia.
Oh, yes.
Every day.
Right. Have you read Humble the Poet's 2 books?
Yes.
Which book do you prefer, the first or second?
I prefer the third.
You've read the third?
Yeah.
Already?
Yeah.
Okay. Exclusive release. All right. Okay. All right.
No.
And just
I prefer no. For the record,
Yeah.
I prefer the second one definitely. The first one was self-authored, self-published. Second one was tidied up.
Yeah. And in terms of creators, Just Rain or AK Amazing?
AK.
Yeah, AK. I thought AK as well. Just because he's kept more with the consistency. The internet police stuff still has me in stitches. Honestly, it still gets me.
I thought Just Rain was funny, but he's some of his slapstick stuff wasn't that funny. None of that was a problem for me. It was just he always got butt hurt too quick. That's the bit I didn't like about him. He got really hurt really quick. Didn't have a thick skin.
And now we got So Hilarious on the scene. So it's not really.
Well, to be fair, I really liked his stuff when I used to watch it. Like when he first started out. Now I understand most of his stuff is just Instagram and that, so I don't see it.
It's all Instagram and TikToks and stuff. But
I remember sending him a message saying, Giza, you're so funny. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
I remember getting zero response from him. I'm thinking, all right, he's still obviously annoyed about the 3.5 scoring. So I was like, okay, I won't mess
I'll bring that
him.
up to him the next time I talk to him.
Yeah, do that. He's tell him he's well funny. His stuff I thought was wicked.
Yeah, he's doing really well, man. We're all really proud of him. Harvey, you got anything to plug? So your websites or anything where you want people to follow you? I know you're not on social media or anything, but
you can check out anything you want to see about me or what we do at naujawani.com, naujawani.com, and yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. That's it. Gaurav, anything to add?
No, brilliant. This is a great discussion. We kept it real. Harvey's a real cool guy. I've been wanting to speak to him for a long, long time. So thank you for your time today. And I'm sure I'll pass across again. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to collaborate on many, many things.